morning, Miami. My honor and privilege to be here, people. I have to tell you, I came in this morning from Atlanta, and I took a 5:55 flight out of Atlanta. I was in the car heading to the airport. I switched on the radio, and they were talking about Matthew. And I thought, hey, fantastic. This will be an opportunity to get an update on the storm, see exactly what's going on. And then they went on to explain about, chapter 6, verse 22. And I realized they had the other Matthew, but I wish him well too. It's a beautiful thing. This had no effect, and I certainly hope the other one doesn't either. I cannot tell you what an honor and privilege it is to be here, to speak for an organization like YEHUDI. And I've got to tell you, to get a South African to speak at an organization where there's a line is a no-brainer. I mean, we do Africa, we do line. I particularly do Africa, and I particularly do lines. But I have to tell you that as I learned more and more about it, and as I got to understand what YEHUDI is, it is truly, truly a privilege to just step into this space, engage with my brothers and sisters as you guys reach in, dig in, and make stuff happen so that other Jews that are perhaps not as awake and conscious as those of us that like to think we are, can be. And just touch a soul so that generations later, it lights up the world as we are doing today in a dark, confusing, fluxing world. I'd like to take a moment as well, if I might, and just steal the podium, very unprofessional, and mention that tonight is actually my father's yahrzeit, his second yahrzeit. My dear beloved father, who traveled from the United States of America to South Africa in 1959 and 61 respectively, and served for over 45 years, changing the platitude and the dynamic of the South African Jewish community. And I'd like to dedicate my remarks to him today, to the holy, holy soul of Reb Nachman Meir ben Tuvia Goodman, and may his soul ascend on high and be a coverance for all of us. Here's something he shared with me. Here's a deal. You got this honey thing going on here. We're sandwiched between Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. We're smacked inside the space. We're in holy times. These are big days of all yada, yada, yada. We take a lot of stuff and we dip it in honey. We like sweet things. You ever ask yourself a question, why honey? Why not brown sugar, honey, sugar cane, stevia? Why honey? And my dad used to teach me a fabulous thing. He used to say, I want to share something with you, Kivi. You understand that once a bee delivers a sting, it dies. That's it, it's over. It eviscerates its entire internal being. A bee's default position is sweetness. It can do nothing else but sweet. That's all it does. It delivers sweet, palatable, digestible, manageable to the world. That is its default position. The minute it steps off that and it stings with venom, with toxicity, it delivers a fatal blow to its entire being. It cannot exist. It is totally and absolutely counterintuitive to its being. This, my dear friends, is us. This is the Jew. We need to get something here. We only exist for light. That is our default position. When we sin, we're stepping off our default position. We simply move off who we naturally are. That's why we return. Baal teshuvah, someone who returns. We don't do penance. That's back in Matthew. We return. We come back to our operating default position. So what is it exactly? What precisely is our essence? What is this thing, the Jew? Exactly. This thing that the world absolutely disdains beyond, reserves the right to hate with a passion, but cannot live without. But must have on every board of directors, must have as their CMO, as their CEO, as their CFO, If you want to get something done in this world, you've got to get a Jew on board. I must have their cancer drugs, and I must have their technology, and I must have every other element of their finesse in their being. They must educate my children, they must do my accounting, they must do my legal work. They must come into my business and actually make my bottom line robust and profitable and make stuff happen. But I don't like them. What is this thing that has been this way for eons, for generations? And now we live in a world where it's now the soup du jour and it's popular again to diss and disdain and publicly get on the bandwagon and become a BDS member, and anti-Semitism is now, quite favorable and popular. Go right ahead and get on the whole Palestinian garbage thing and do that whole story. What is this? What happened over here? So I ask you this, what actually is the Jew? I don't ask you what the Jew does. What actually is the Jew? So I want to share something with you. I travel the world, I speak for corporations on strategic management and sales. And I happen to be in Tokyo, Japan. And I had an 8 o'clock platform in the evening, and I'm speaking for a small corporation by the name of Mitsui that does something like $7 billion a year. And this was a regional global leadership meeting. I was going to speak in English with simultaneous translation, although a lot of people think my English actually sounds like Japanese, but nonetheless, there was simultaneous translation there. And here's the deal. 8 o'clock platform in the evening, I'd already checked in to find out what time, Mincha and Mariv, and what time we have to, how things are working over there, all good to go. At about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the meeting planners had arranged for an AV sound check, a full-on AV sound check. I come in there, I do my thing. It's a most impressive building, by the way, a huge tower is building. The Mitsui Towers in Tokyo, Japan. And as I step off to head back to the hotel, one of the meeting planners says to me, Kivi, would you mind actually meeting a certain gentleman, one of the high-ranking executives upstairs, he'd like to meet you. I said, sure, be my absolute pleasure. And she takes me all the way up onto the 26th floor of the tower, and there I come into the office of a tiny, small little man, YEHUDI off the ground, who's actually Korean. His name's Mr. George Kim, and he is the Chief Operating Officer of Logistics and Operation Management for Mitsui in the Pacific Asia market. And as I come into his office, we connect. I had a business card in my hand, and I gave him the traditional Asian greeting, and I stepped out my hand. He did the same. We exchanged cards, and I thanked him for his gratuity to meet me. And I see there in the corner a very plush, small office, by the way, very plush though. Nice little couch. I take a seat. I head towards there, take a seat. Except that as soon as I move over there, he ushers me over to the other corner. And in the other corner, there on the wall, is this enormously elaborate, very sophisticated situation going on with a piece of art that's sitting on the wall. And I immediately take cognizance of this and take a read on it, and there's all sorts of stuff going on in there. There's infrared lights, there's heavy cabinetry, and this piece of art is housed in this incredible kind of little story going on over there. And Mr. Kim doesn't say a word to me, but he just ushers me over to come take a look at this piece of art on the wall. And I'm standing there, Mr. Kim's on my left-hand side, I'm towering over him, I feel very uncomfortable. And I'm just standing looking at this piece of art on the wall, and I see that in fact it's a Picasso. I lean in and I see the signature on the right-hand side. I'm looking at this thing and I think, this is actually something like my 10-year-old kid could have drawn with some crayons, but it's an important piece of art, and it's fantastic. And I have a whole new relationship and respect for it. And as I'm standing there looking at this, looking at my watch for a second to think, time to maybe get back so we can have a chat, I can get out of here, eat my wife's peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, go daven mincha. Mr. Kim speaks for the first time, and he says, Mr. Kivi, let me ask a question. How much you think piece art on a wall? And I'm thinking, how much is a piece of art on the wall? So listen, I'm Jewish, right? So when I come into a room, I look around, I make an assessment of, we all do this. You walk into a restaurant, you know within 20 minutes how much money the guy made, in a day. Because we make assessments, calculations. Well, you've got 50 tables times 25 people each. In the course of the day, 5 hours of operating. Yeah, he just made $30,000. Okay, great. So I'm looking at this, I see this whole situation. There's a lot going on here. This is an elaborate piece of art. So I'm figuring the piece of art, if it's supported by this, has to be substantial. And I say to him, Mr. Kim, I have no idea. I mean, this is a Picasso. Maybe $2 million, $3 million. So he's paralytic. He thinks this is the funniest thing he's ever heard in his life, and he's absolutely out. He says, no, not for insurance, for piece art on a wall. How much you think piece art on a wall? And I'm thinking, okay, it's a lot of money. I say, I have no idea how much you pay for it. He says, Mitsui Corporation buy piece art on a wall from Sotheby's, $21.6 million. It's a lot of money. You know what YEHUDI could do with $21.6 million, right? Okay, but hey, it's a piece of art on the wall. That's fantastic. And I look at my watch and I'm back in there and I'm wondering, perhaps maybe we can just have a chat and speak a little bit about Mitsui, etc. And Mr. Kim stands right there, puts his hands behind his back, and he says, Mr. Kivi, what do you think worst possible thing you can do for piece art on a wall? And I'm thinking, what's the worst possible thing I can do for the piece of art on the wall? I'm like, buddy, this is a no-brainer. You just told me it's worth $21.6 million. Mr. Kim, you go up to the piece of art on the wall, you take it out of its housing, and you rip it in half and destroy it. Like the worst possible thing you could do to something that has a value of $21.6 million, that is a piece of art. No, Mr. Kivi. If you come to piece art on a wall and you tear in half, it's original Picasso, idiot, tear in half, but original Picasso. I'm thinking, I hear that. Fantastic, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, and perhaps maybe we can just, Mr. Kivi, what do you think worst possible thing you can do for piece art on a wall? And I'm reviewing this and I'm thinking it over and I'm thinking, what's the worst possible thing? I hear the original idea that he deposited. This is good. It has intrinsic value. And I'm thinking, you know what, Mr. Kim, here's the thing. If I don't go downstairs into the street, I go to a hardware store. I pick up a brush and I pick up oil paint and I come back upstairs onto the 26th floor of the building and I paint all over this painting. I superimpose my genius, you're right, over Picasso's. Worst possible thing I could do that art. To which he says, no, Mr. Kivi. If you go downstairs, you buy a paint brush and paint. You come upstairs, you paint all over Picasso. It's original Picasso, idiot paint over, but original Picasso. I'm thinking that's fantastic. I hear that. I hear you 100%. And perhaps, but Mr. Kivi, let me ask, what worst possible thing you can do for this Picasso? So now I've got it. I've totally, absolutely got what he's telling me. I'm understanding this, I hear it. Now I come up with a genius. Watch this. You know what, Mr. Kim? I'll tell you what. There is a $21.6 million Picasso that you have acquired through Sotheby's on your wall. The worst possible thing that you could do to that Picasso is actually remove it from where human beings can engage it and put it in a vault where absolutely no one has access to it. Now, by the way, this is a good idea. I mean, if you think about what I'm sharing over here, this is intelligent. You take the genius of Picasso that he has birthed into the world and you preclude human beings from engaging it, where they will enjoy it, engage it, celebrate it. This is horrendous. No, Mr. Kivi. If you take a piece of art on the wall, Picasso, you put it in a vault where nobody sees Picasso. It's original Picasso, idiot put in a vault, but original Picasso. Before he can get the words out of his mouth, I share with him. And I say to him, Mr. Kim, do me a favor if you don't mind. Share with me, I'd be honored. What actually is the worst possible thing I can do to that piece of art on the wall? And Mr. Kim, without missing a beat, puts his right hand in his pocket, reaches in, and he pulls out of his pocket a superbly manicured, beautiful leather little set. He unzips it. He takes out a manicure scissor, nail scissor, and he puts it between his fingers and he engages it. And he ushers me to come closer to the piece of art on the wall. And he says the following: if you leave Picasso on our wall, but you cut out signature from Picasso, Picasso on the wall with signature, $21.6 million. Picasso on the wall without signature, no dollar. Its entire value is premised on the fact that it has an origin. It belongs to the hand of the great Picasso. Tell my wife I'll be home about 9. This is why it's valuable. It has an origin. And you see, friends, I want to share the following with you. I turned around and we finally made it to the couch to sit down. And here's the thing. I got in a visceral, deep way that the books were not able to teach me all my years at school, at the yeshiva, what it actually means to be an observant Jew. I got it for the first time. You see, to live in God's world as we do, with its absolute precision, with all its magnificence, engaging it, not just surviving in it, but thriving in it, getting out there, catching big fish off this coastline, and not to simply return things back to the origin, to the hand, to the author that allowed them to be, is simply non-observant. That's it. Have a good day. Shalom. When you acknowledge and you see and you call out God's hand in the world, you're observant. When you don't, you're unobservant. You're conscious, you're unconscious. You think an apple came from Publix. When you're unconscious, that's what you think. When you're conscious, that very same apple that you take off that very same shelf, as do tens of thousands of other people all over the United States of America, except here comes a Jew, one single Jew, YEHUDI, and he touches that apple, and she touches that apple, and she takes it off that shelf, and she takes 1 second to simply say, hang on a second, I see you, God. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed be the Lord our God, Borei pri ha'etz, that has made something that comes from a tree. Crunch. That is observant. You come into a boardroom and an attorney at a closing for a property deal you've been working on for 15 months, and you're sitting around and you're final, and HUD agreements are in place, and everyone's agreed, and it's all in, and it's robust, and it's thick, and it's profitable, like it used to be in the old days. And you sit down, and you sign that thing away, and buy and sell it, transact, and the whole thing takes place. You walk out of that room, and you say, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your work, I appreciate it. And I just want to take a moment to thank God for this opportunity. That is observant. That is conscious. That is observant. To walk out of that very same room and simply say nothing is simply unobservant. You're a cardiothoracic surgeon. You just complete an involved double, triple, quadruple bypass. And it goes well, and everything happens as it should, thank God. Except you forget to say that. And you walk out and you thank everyone, and thank you, great work guys, great job. You're unconscious, you're just unobservant, that's all. But you walk out of that same operating theater with the same result, and you simply take a second out to say, and let's take a moment to thank God that all went well and this patient is okay. That's observant. You're an observant human being. How is this? We are programmed internally to be the nation on earth, the single nation on earth that reads God's signature naturally. That does not mean that there are not other nations of the world that cannot come in and learn how to read God's signature. They do. And we have that mechanism. However, the Jew, by virtue of his or her natural propensity, it's called a godly soul, naturally has a propensity to read value where other people simply do not see it. They just don't see it. We naturally gravitate to observant value. And if you don't believe me, ladies and gentlemen, ask the world. Where do you buy property in the United States of America? Where? What, you're going to pick up an MIT manual? You're going to pick up a Harvard School of MBA? And do research about trending logistics and demographic graphics? And you're going to make an acquisition purchase? You're going to phone up Moshe Goldberg and you're going to ask him, where did you just invest? Bottom line, laugh at it all day long. Here's how it is. That's simply the bottom line. You're going to go to a massive hedge fund and you're going to find out where they're playing. You know why? There's some guy sitting in the back over there whose name is so-and-so Joshua Goldman or Deborah, something or other, okay? And she's got her finger on a bunch of emerging property sites and placements, and that's where it's happening. It all kind of just traces back there. How is this? Why is this? You see, it's all well and good to really kind of trash Jews when it's politically convenient. But believe me, when Ahmadinejad needs to have open heart surgery, okay, he's looking for Joshua Goldberg and Deborah Wasserman. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Let him go into an hospital. Yeah, you can have Muhammad Ahmed Abadjin, or you can have a guy by the name of David Goldsmith, okay? Yeah, for his heart, that's good. This is how it is in the world. Why is that? It's a natural propensity. It's not a bias, ladies and gentlemen. It's just a natural propensity we have. And I'm here to share with you today, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that touching this in its essence is the biggest work we can do. You want to have a sweet year? You want to have a year that just exudes and bleeds sweetness into the world? Understand critically not what you have done, but who you are. Touch it. If you understand who you are, you will permanently be conscious of your relevance to the world. We come from a history that smacked us around, and it knocked into our heads this notion of insular, provincial living. This is not a Jewish idea. I want to share with you a story. See, I had the opportunity to speak for a small company by the name of Tupperware, actually in Orlando, Florida. Orlando, Florida houses Tupperware. It's been around since like 1960. And I get a call from their chief marketing officer, a lady by the name of Mercedes Bernhard at the time, and she says, Kivi, we'd like you to come present at our international international office management conference. And they had this huge event at the Marriott there in Orlando, and I was actually the opening speaker, and Lance Armstrong was actually the closing speaker. Interesting story in and of itself. And as I come down to connect and to meet with them, earlier on again doing a sound check, Mercedes comes over to me, she says to me, Kivi, I hope you don't mind. There's been a request from Mr. Richard Going, who was the chief executive officer of Tupperware at the time, an extraordinarily eccentric man, fascinating human being, by the way, but a very eccentric individual. He says, he'd like to meet you. I walk into this room, and there are about 8, 9, 10 people sitting around a conference table. And they're having a meeting. They're engaged in a small meeting. He stands up and he says, come sit over here. I sit over there. He says, this is so-and-so from O&M, Ogilvy Methods in New York. He introduces me to 2 executives, and he says, the rest are all Tupperware folks. And we're having a discussion. Here's the discussion. We're about to relaunch a massive platform, their electronic platform. And the question is, do they keep the tagline? Tupperware for many years simply traded with the following logo and tagline. Tupperware, keeping it contained. And that's how they managed to do billions of dollars of business. And the big question is, when they launch onto the web platform for this new rollout, should they keep the tagline, should they not, keeping it contained? And this is exactly, my friends, what he says. What does the Jew think? I said, it's interesting you ask that question. Let me tell you what the Jew thinks. Horrendous. We are not built for containment. You cannot keep the Jew contained. You can try, as many did, but you cannot. We are not built for containment. We are built for relevance, and I'm talking about exponential relevance in this physical material world. Angels, God has. He needed people down here that will be relevant and angelic. That's us, the Jews. You cannot keep us contained. Absolutely. And if you want to take Tupperware to a whole new level of existence and a whole new space of presence, scrap it. It's not a Jewish idea. There wasn't a word said. It was silent. You could hear a pin drop. He said, thank you. Mercedes took me out. I went on, and that was that. It doesn't exist today, that tagline. You've got the purple logo. I don't know if I had anything to do with it or I didn't. But you cannot keep the Jew contained. We are not designed and built for that. And my dear brothers and sisters, here's what I want to share with you. If you do not articulate and pronounce your value as a Jew to the world, I have news for you. The world will actually do so for you. You see, everyone around you expects the Jew in you. And that's what they're anticipating you bring to the office, you bring to your surgery, you bring to your boardroom. That's what they're anticipating, society that is, that you're going to bring to your dining room table. It's us that duck and dive, just want to blend, just do not want to be stuck out, don't want to get my head taken off. I don't want to be seen, perceived, heard of, known. Who are you kidding? You think they don't know what's underneath that baseball cap? They expect it. They anticipate it. That is your differentiating element. This is precisely the north on the compass that they are looking for. Why do you leave home without it? It's your single biggest brand. It's who you are in your essence. You seek, perceive, identify, and articulate value like no one else in the world does. This is who you are. Which is why I happened to be in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand, and they put me up on the like the 30th floor of this, in one of these bridal suites. And they say what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas. I bloody hope so, because, all I know is I had my wife's peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I did put on tefillin there. And I can share with you that it was an incredible event. It was a huge, massive event for ING. And Mr. Richard Britton, the Chief Executive Officer of ING at the time, was attending. I come in, massive, massive, massive event. Huge banqueting, they're feeding like 4,500 people. 7 o'clock platform, I come down. Just before I had left earlier in the afternoon, again, meeting planner pulls me into a small little room where I just meet Mr. Richard Britton, and he's working together with his PA. He says, Kivi, pleasure to meet you. I said, the honor's mine. He says, is there anything at all that you need? Anything. I said, sir, I have everything. Thank you so much. I'm fine. I'm really good. He says, we look forward. We'll see you later. Thank you. Now, folks, I've done with this event what I do with all my events. I ordered a little fruit platter, okay, that you've got to pay like 75, 100 bucks for. You eat a couple of grapes at the top while everyone else is enjoying delicious calamari and all sorts of good, food. And that's how it is, on my pleasure. I come down, it's an absolute zoo there. I mean, there are thousands of people, and they're serving this massive dinner. They take me through to the head table, and I'm sitting there at the head table with a whole bunch of the big knackers. You understand? It's very nice. Okay. As I come to this placement, as I come in, I see the maitre d' signal someone else. Mr. Britton stands up, and he says, Kivi, I'd like you to meet my wife, Mary. I say, ma'am, it's an honor, privilege to meet you. We sit down, and as we sit down, I see this assistant coming with a huge platter of fruit. Okay, gevaar van 'n geld. But listen, puts the thing down in front of me, that's it. Everyone else is enjoying all sorts of good food over there. I've got my fruit, I've got a glass of water, and I'm good to go. Except that a few seconds later, there are another 2 platters coming down the line. And the assistant places 1 platter in front of Mr. Britton, Chief Executive Officer of ING. Mrs. Britton, his wife, and the Chief Executive Officer of ING, a Fortune 500, turns to a Jew from Johannesburg, South Africa, who now lives in Atlanta, with a yarmulke on his head, and says the following: I hope you don't mind, Kivi. My wife and I also ordered a fruit platter because I know that you only eat kosher, and I didn't want you to feel uncomfortable. See, what I'm trying to share with you is that if you do not articulate your value to the world outside, the world will actually do it for you. Which is why one evening, I'm at the airport in Kansas City after just having spoken to the Sheraton Hotel Group. And I get there, my flight is at 7:30 in the evening, and I get to the airport and it's about 5:45, and I'm sitting at the gate, I'm checked in, and there is that beautiful ding that we've all heard before. Flight so-and-so to Atlanta delayed because of inclemental weather, etc. Beautiful. We adjust, we this, that, the other. I phone my wife, I say, listen, sweetheart, I won't be home till really late. It'll probably be 12, 1 o'clock in the morning before I get in. I'll see you in the morning. I sit back, I relax, except that 20 minutes later, there it is. Flight so-and-so to Atlanta cancelled due to thunderstorms moving through. Beautiful. Everyone stands up, goes to the ticketing counter, stands in line, gets re-ticketed, etc. I do the same. By the time I'd gotten up to the counter and to the individual assisting me on the other side, I'd already been re-ticketed onto flight at 10:50 p.m. back to Atlanta. I go buy myself a cup of coffee at Starbucks, and that's me. I sit down, I relax. A couple of minutes later, here's what happens. A guy comes over to me, and he says, excuse me, sir, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? I'm looking at this guy, I'm checking him out. He's a well-dressed, manicured, put-together guy. He doesn't look like he's Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Qaeda. And I say, hey, sure, go right ahead, man. He says, what flight are you on back to Atlanta? Well, now I really want to check out his credentials. I said, well, I'm on the 10:50 flight back to Atlanta. He looks at me square in the eyes and he says, thank you, God bless you. I said, thank you. And I watch him go off, and he moves off, and he stands in line, and he moves up the counter, and he gets to the ticketing agent, tickets himself, goes and buys himself a cup of coffee, sits down at the gate. Now, this is no good for me. I got to find out what's happening here. Okay? I go over to him, I say, excuse me, sir, do you mind if I ask you a personal question, actually? Like, what's the deal here? Now, watch something amazing. You know what he says to me? He says, let me share something with you. I'm actually a pilot with Delta ending a 4-day leg. I'm based out of Atlanta. I was hopping back to Atlanta on the 7:30 flight. As I came into the gate, I heard them announce thunderstorms. He says, people have no idea how dangerous it is to fly in an aeroplane during lightning and thunder. He said to me, an aeroplane, a tube, is a steel tube that says to lightning, strike me here. That's what he said to me. Beautiful. He says, very dangerous. So I immediately phoned my wife and I said to her, you know what? I'm going to stay over in Kansas. I'm going to jump in the morning and I'll see you then. Except that as I was walking out of the gate, I saw you sitting there. He says, and I saw your yarmulke. And he explains to me, see, it says in my book, which is really my book, another story, that those that bless the Jew, they themselves shall be blessed. So I figured like this, if I could find out what flight you're actually on and get on that flight, I know that God is not striking that plane with lightning. So I went to the ticketing counter, I said if I can get on the 1050, and I did. I phoned my wife, I said, I'm coming in. I said, that's a fascinating story, thank you, that'll be $500. See, here's what I'm trying to share with you. If you do not articulate your value to the world for who and what you are in your essence, the world will actually call you to do so. And I simply close with this story. I was speaking for Prudential Life, also in Vegas. I finish up a keynote, and as I come off the platform, a tall individual who clearly has a presence about him is standing there with his arms open like this. And as I come in there, I hug him, check him for weapons, he was clean. And he pulls back and he says, Kivi, do you know who I am? I said, forgive me, sir, I don't. He says, my name is Raymond Berry, and I was a very senior VP for Prudential in its early days. But my claim to fame is that I played for the Baltimore Ravens, and I was VIP in the 70s all the way through, and I had a long career in professional football. I'm like, that is fantastic, my honor, thank you. He says, but my real claim to fame is this. I was the first celebrity to back the Billy Graham evangelical ministry. I said, pleasure to meet you. He says, today is my retirement. I'm officially retiring from the executive board of Prudential, and they are taking me into retirement. And he says to me the following, it is no mistake that God brought a Jew to send me into retirement. I said, you know, Mr. Raymond, Mr. Berry, we all work for one God. He says, no, let me explain to you. I've been with the evangelical movement for 40 years. He said to me, we preach about God. We preach God. But the Jews, they practice God. See, the notion of belief is one thing. The action of trust is another. There are plenty of nations in the world, my dear friends, and with this I leave you, that have given God consciousness. Plenty. But there is only one nation on earth that has taken that consciousness and put it into practice, has the commitment to live like the Jew. And that is you, and all of us. We will all die as a Jew. This is guaranteed. The question is, do we have the courage to actually live like a Jew here, now, in this time, in this space, 2016? And can we do so with passion, with energy, with pride? Can we live loud and proud as the Jews we are? I know we can. I hope you join me. Thank you for your time.